On May 22, 1968, the United States Navy's secret underwater listening network recorded 6 distinct acoustic events in the span of 91 seconds. The sounds came from a point 400 miles southwest of the USS, 2 miles beneath the surface of the Atlantic. When Navy scientists finally understood what they were hearing, they knew exactly where to look, and exactly what had happened to the 99 men aboard USS Scorpion. You're listening to the Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. This episode's narration is AI-generated. The research, writing, and editorial decisions behind every story are made with care for accuracy and respect for those involved. Today, the mystery of a submarine that the Navy heard die in real time, but still can't explain. USS Scorpion was a skipjack-class nuclear attack submarine, 252 feet long, displacement of 3,000 tons, powered by a pressurized water reactor that could drive her at better than 30 knots submerged. She'd been commissioned in 1960, had completed multiple deployments to the Mediterranean, and was considered a reliable boat. On February 15, 1968, she departed Norfolk, Virginia, with 99 officers and enlisted men aboard. Her commanding officer was 37-year-old Commander Francis Atwood Slater E., an experienced submariner with a reputation for running a tight ship. By mid-May, Scorpion had been at sea for 3 months. The crew was ready to go home. On May 17th, Scorpion received new orders while en route back to Norfolk. Naval intelligence had detected Soviet naval activity near the Canary Islands, a group of surface vessels and possibly a submarine. Scorpion was directed to alter course, investigate and photograph the Soviet ships before continuing home. It was a routine tasking. Cold War submarine operations involved a lot of shadowing, a lot of listening, a lot of photographs taken through periscopes. Scorpion acknowledged the orders and changed course. On the evening of May 21st, approaching the USS from the east, Scorpion transmitted a routine position report. The message was brief, professional, unremarkable: her position, her course, her speed. She was approximately 250 miles southwest of the islands. She expected to arrive at Norfolk Naval Base on May 27th for reunion with families. The transmission was received and logged. It was the last anyone heard from USS Scorpion. Norfolk in late May is humid, starting to heat up. The families of Scorpion's crew were preparing for homecoming, cleaning houses, planning meals, marking calendars. One wife had written a letter to her husband that was still in the mail. It would arrive after the Navy declared him dead. Micro Cliffhanger 1. On the morning of May 22nd, radio operators at the Naval Communications Station in Norfolk were expecting a routine position report from Scorpion. The report didn't come. That wasn't unusual. Submarines sometimes maintained radio silence. But as the hours turned to days, concern began to rise. May 23rd, still no word. May 24th, Atlantic Submarine Force started informal inquiries. May 27th, the day Scorpion was supposed to pull into port, the Navy officially declared her overdue and presumed missing. Families gathered at the naval base. Wives, children, parents, waiting for news that would never be good. The Navy launched a massive search operation. Surface ships, patrol aircraft, other submarines, all scanning Scorpion's expected route. The Atlantic is vast. Submarines are designed to be invisible. Days turned to weeks. No debris field, no oil slick, no emergency beacon, no wreckage. But what the Navy wasn't saying publicly was this: they'd been listening to the ocean the entire time. The sound surveillance system was one of the Cold War's best-kept secrets, arrays of underwater microphones positioned on the ocean floor designed to detect Soviet submarines transiting the Atlantic. The system was so sensitive it could hear a submarine's propeller from hundreds of miles away. On May 22, 1968, at approximately 1800 hours Greenwich Mean Time, SOH recorded acoustic events in the North Atlantic. 6 sounds, 91 seconds total duration. The location 400 miles southwest of the USS. At the time, no one connected the sounds to Scorpion, but when the submarine was declared missing 5 days later, a Navy scientist named John Craven went back to the tapes. Craven was the chief scientist for the Navy's Special Projects Office. He understood acoustic signatures. He understood what implosions sounded like. And when he analyzed the SOH-SUS data from May 22nd, he understood exactly what had happened. The first sound was a small explosion, high energy, short duration. Then, 91 seconds later, 5 successive sounds, each one slightly different in frequency and intensity. Craven recognized the pattern immediately. Those 5 sounds were hull compartments collapsing under pressure as the submarine sank past crush depth. SOH-SUS had recorded USS Scorpion dying, second by second, compartment by compartment, 2 miles down. Acoustic triangulation is a matter of geometry. If you know where your listening stations are, and you know the speed of sound through seawater, you can calculate where a sound originated. Craven's analysis was precise. He gave the search teams a target area measured in miles, not hundreds of miles. Micro cliffhanger 2. On October 30th, 1968, 5 months after Scorpion's final transmission, the research vessel USS Myzar located the wreckage. Depth, 10,000 feet. Position, exactly where the acoustic analysis had predicted. The Myzar was equipped with a deep-sea camera sled. The photographs it brought back were grainy, black and white, taken in near-total darkness with artificial lights. But they were definitive. Scorpion's sail, the conning tower, had been torn from the hull and was lying on its side, bent backward like a broken toy. The pressure hull was broken into sections. The torpedo room area showed catastrophic damage. The debris field stretched across the ocean floor. Both nuclear reactors were intact. No radiation leak detected. The submarine hadn't suffered a reactor accident, but the damage to the torpedo room told a story. In January 1969, a Navy Court of Inquiry convened to investigate the loss. They reviewed the acoustic data, they examined the photographs, they interviewed experts. And in January 1970, they issued their findings. The probable cause was a torpedo accident in the torpedo room. The scenario went like this. One of Scorpion's Mark 37 torpedoes experienced a hot-running malfunction, its engine activating while still in the tube. The crew would have attempted an emergency procedure to disarm it. If that failed, the torpedo's warhead, 330 pounds of high explosive, would have detonated inside the torpedo room. The explosion would have caused rapid flooding. The submarine would have lost depth control, sinking past crush depth in minutes. That explained the acoustic signature, small explosion, then a series of implosions as compartments collapsed. It was the most likely explanation, but it wasn't the only one. Some experts argued the acoustic data didn't match a torpedo detonation. John Craven himself later speculated that one of Scorpion's acoustic homing torpedoes might have malfunctioned, circled back, and struck the submarine from outside. The wreckage photos showed internal damage, but interpretation of deep-sea photographs is difficult. Metal torn inward can look like metal torn outward when everything is compressed and corroded. Other theories persisted. A few family members believed Scorpion had been attacked by a Soviet vessel in retaliation for a different incident. Some analysts pointed to mechanical failures, a trash disposal unit failure causing uncontrolled flooding. Some suggested a battery explosion. The wreckage was there, the photos existed, the acoustic data was precise. And still, no one could say for certain what killed USS Scorpion. Here's what the acoustic data actually recorded. The first sound, the small explosion, lasted a fraction of a second. Then, 91 seconds of silence. During that time, Scorpion was sinking. The crew would have been fighting to control the boat, to stop the flooding, to surface. They would have known they were losing. Then the first implosion. That was a compartment, a sealed section of the hull reaching crush depth. The pressure hull is designed to withstand immense external pressure, but once the limit is exceeded, collapse is instantaneous. The compartment implodes inward with explosive force. 4 more implosions followed, each a few seconds apart. Each one was another compartment being crushed as the submarine continued to sink. Each sound meant that section of the boat, and anyone inside it, was gone. By the time the 6th sound faded, score per un was at 10,000 feet. All 99 men were dead. The Navy could hear the submarine dying second by second. They just didn't know it was score per un until 5 days later. In 1993, the Navy designated the wreckage site as a maritime grave. Diving is prohibited. The families asked that the submarine not be salvaged. 99 men are still at their duty stations 2 miles down in the darkness. The Navy knows when Score P-Un died, down to the second. They know where she lies, within a few hundred yards. But even with the wreckage in hand, even with the acoustic recordings, even with decades of analysis, they couldn't say with certainty why it happened. Commander Slatter E's widow received his final letter 3 days after the Navy declared him missing. He'd written it on May 18th. He told her he'd see her soon. He signed it with love. Sometimes the data is perfect, and the answer is still out of reach. Sometimes the ocean keeps its secrets even when it whispers them to those who know how to listen. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.